First tonight, it is no secret women tend to face more hurdles and harassment in their careers than men. That is especially true for the women breaking barriers in a very male-dominated field, sports journalism. Those trailblazers, such as Claire Smith and Robin Roberts, to name just two, are the focus of a new book called Who Let Them In? Path-Breaking Women in Sports Journalism. It was written by Joanne Lannin, who lives here in Maine and is no stranger to the world of sports writing. Samantha sat down with Lannin to discuss a variety of stories in the book, including one in particular that stood out to Lannin.
Interestingly, the person I enjoyed writing about the most isn't one of the best known. Her name is Karen Garigian. You'll actually sometimes see her name in the Press Herald because she writes for the Boston Herald. She covers the New England Patriots, and she's done it forever. She's my age almost. She's been in the business that long, writing, and her story is just fascinating. I mean, I love her story. She's gone through a lot. She's beaten cancer twice. She's had to push against all those barriers that women had to push against. And she's just so well loved in the Boston community. When Tom Brady left the Patriots, he had a press conference. This was a Zoom conference, of course. But anyway, it was Karen's turn to ask him a question, and he said, "Oh, Karen, hi, I'm going to miss you so much." So, and she was so gracious about, telling me about her family and why she never left the Herald, because ESPN came calling. They wanted her, to go to them, but she always wanted to stay with the Herald. And so that chapter was the most fun to write, and getting to know her.
I bet. The majority of stories that you share, they're pretty uplifting, inspiring. But there is a chapter that touches on a very serious subject, the Me Too movement.
For women sports writers, women in sports media, and probably women in media in general, it's kind of a triple whammy, harassment is, because you can be harassed by the players you're covering, you can be harassed by the management of the teams that, well, maybe it's a quadruple whammy. You can be harassed by the management of the teams that you're covering. You can be harassed by your own management or fellow employees, and you can be harassed by fans, mostly on, Twitter and Instagram and all that. So it's a lot, I mean, there are workshops and college courses that are devoted to helping young women, navigate this crazy, it has become kind of a crazy landscape.
Yeah.
But things are going in the right direction, you're right. And like I said, I think a lot of it is because of the women themselves, and they're being willing to be out there and talking about it and accusing their accusers and not being silent anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned too that you wrote for the Press Herald 22 years. You were the first woman sports writer for the paper.
Right.
What was that like for you at the time, going into these locker rooms, talking to all the boys in there, maybe they're naked some days, who knows what you're going to walk into. Yeah. Did you kind of face any barriers yourself as a woman?
People paved the way for me. I think my editors and fellow sports writers did a pretty good job of paving the way for me. So I never really faced any, any pushback or any real harassment like some of the women in the locker room chapter had to go through so much. But in terms of me being the first woman, some people get the idea that I'm the first woman in Maine, and I'm not, because a woman named Joni Averill started writing for the Bangor Daily News in 1979. Bud Levitt, the crusty old sports editor of the Bangor Daily News, called her in one day and said, "Hey, we've got to solve our woman problem. You need to start writing about sports." So she did. Wow. They gave her a column, and she started writing about women's sports, and she did it, I think, for more than 20 years. So she was actually the first woman sports writer in Maine, and I think she's in a Hall of Fame. I'm not sure which one it is.
I'll have to check.
Yeah, either a Journalism Hall of Fame or a Basketball Hall of Fame. But anyway, she needs to get her due. And if there's one regret I have, it's that I didn't interview her for this book, because she would have been fun to interview. Yeah.
Hey, you can always write another book,
That's right.
You close this book with a quote about women in sports media being great ninjas because they are able to adapt and get things done. Is the work done yet for women finding their place in this industry?
I don't think so, especially now that the economy being the way it is, you know, if we were ever to get to 50-50, media companies would have to hire all women for the next 10 years. And that's not going to happen, obviously, because there are plenty of men, good men, talented guys who you know, want to be announcing sports or, you know, being on a broadcast or even writing. So I think being adaptable means, you know, it's okay if you start out behind the camera or just, you know, as an intern somewhere. And it's okay if you have to do, you know, carry a camera like you've done, and you know, shoot the pictures and do all that other stuff just to get your foot in the door and make a name for yourself. And that's what I think women are good at.
Again, the name of Joanne Lannin's book is Who Let Them In? You can find it in the usual places, and we've got a link to it on our website and app.